All right. Shalom and welcome. Tonight is World History. I'll be your teacher tonight, KANASH, Deacon KANASH Yasharahla. We're going to get it started right now. Let me just check a few things. All right, so tonight we're going into world history. I hope everybody had a beautiful dedication. Ours was wonderful here at True Nation Israelite Congregation. We feasted for 8 days. Whole lot of fun. It's good to celebrate the Most High's holy days and, come together in unity, brotherhood, sisterhood, with no, fights or none of that. So all praises to that. So let's get into it. Tonight we're going over, this is a beautiful lesson right here. The Dark Ages of West Africa, right? We always hear about the Dark Ages in Europe. How Israelites or so-called blacks ruled the world during that time in different parts of Europe. So we're going to get into the Dark Ages, the rulership, right, of blacks, so-called blacks, Israelites, in the west parts of Africa. So tonight we're going to focus on some key. There was a lot of empires or kingdoms that came up between I say the 800s and the 15th or 14th century, right? So a couple of kingdoms that we have that rose up. One of the more popular ones was the Empire of Ghana, the Tukuru, the Gayo Empire, the Masi Kingdom, the Kingdom of Benin. That's a more popular one. The Mali Empire, right? And then we also had the Empire of Judah, or Wida, right? Which on the map, old. I wish I had my PowerPoint. I could pull it up. Salakia, hold on, I'm gonna get it right here. Connection right here. All right, so I can't pull it up. I thought I had it in my notes. All right, so we had a map of that time, right? Which was called Negro Land. Why? Because a lot of the Israelites ruled, in those areas, and specifically we have. It's crazy because people pulled this map out, and that's why I said this is a more popular one. Is on the map it says the Kingdom of Judah, or Wida, right? On the Slave Coast, or the Gold Coast, right? So let's get into it. First, let's talk about, because we want to make sure that we understand that the people who was ruling in this area weren't just Africans, right? They were actually Israelites. And we understand this through history and how the Israelites ended up over there, right? So we're gonna run through it. And hopefully you guys get an understanding and understand that, because our people, they go out and they start celebrating Kwanzaa and, all this other foolishness. They want to be Pan-African and Egyptology and all this other stuff. But we got to understand that the Israelites made all these places great, right? The Israelites made all these places great. And without the infrastructures that Israelites built up, without the mathematics that Israelites brung, and without the salt that Israelites brung, right? None of these kingdoms would flourish, or none of these kingdoms would have been held up if it wasn't for Israelites. So, let me get this real quick. I gotta connect to this internet. Hold on one second. So I'm gonna run it down to y'all. It's gonna be, I can't give y'all all the empires because it's a lot that go into it, but I'm gonna try to touch on each and every last one of them. Get this real quick. Hopefully that's it. Let's see. Alrighty. Okay, we up and running. All right. So let's get it. Go to my Blue Letter Bible. Where you at? Okay, right here. All right, first off, let's start off with Deuteronomy. Y'all go with me to Deuteronomy chapter 7. And we're going to read verse 6, right? Everybody know the scripture, but we got to get it because we got to understand that there's nobody on this earth like Israelites. And this is why these kingdoms were great, and this is why these kingdoms flourish, right? Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 6. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth, right? So the Most High chose us to be his special people, and he chose us to be above all these nations and to show our might and our glory, in front of the nations, right? The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you because ye were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people. So every time we came in, we were always the underdogs. But the Most High made sure that we always came up on top, no matter what, right? So when we understand that we're his chosen people and that we're special and we bring all these things to the forefront, then, we'll understand our position. So Deuteronomy, go with me to Deuteronomy chapter 28. I want to get something else. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 1. So upon that, you have to understand, right? Let's read this. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt not hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee, Salakia, the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations, right? And then on the flip side, we have Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses will come upon us and overtake us, right? So the Most High said, look, I said before you a blessing and a curse. Choose ye this day what you gonna choose, right? And it's crazy because once you really go into, even with Israel coming out of Egypt and establishing, the land of Canaan, right, and really setting their foot and really becoming kings and prospering, there always came, a blessing, and then, whatever would follow was a curse. For the simple fact is, we always went and we disobeyed and broke the Most High's commandments. So throughout these kingdoms that the Israelites set up, or these empires that the Israelites set up in West Africa, you understand that they had their time of blessing and they had their time of cursing. So it's always been there. The blessings and the curse have always been there. But as we go on, you will see that as they came in, as they migrated from Israel to the west part of Africa, right, you will see that they kept a lot of their customs and their culture, but then little by little, they started to put off, the customs and the culture, and they started to take on, different religions, different ideologies, and so on and so forth. And that's what caused them, to go into captivity each and every time. So from there, let's go to Luke. We're going to go to Luke. Get it right now. Let's go to Luke chapter 21. And let's read verse 20, because this is literally prophecy, that the Most High spoke unto the children of Israel, right? All right. Luke chapter 21. Don't crash on me now, okay? Luke chapter 21 and verse 20, right? These are the words that Yahushua spoke, to his prophets, right? So it says, verse 20, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, Then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. So just know that when you see Rome come in, just know that the temple is about to be destroyed, and Israelites are about to go through great tribulation, right? Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. Why? Why are they fleeing into the mountains, right? And let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter therein too. For these be the days of vengeance, that all these things which are written may be fulfilled. So, you understand, Yahushua said, look, it's crazy because Yahushua, you already know that his parents already ran him down the story. Every time the children of Israel got into trouble, they ran into Egypt, right? Every time the children of Israel or Africa, they ran into, the parts of Africa during the time of Jacob, right? Joseph went into Egypt. He was Joseph went into Egypt, and he was the ruler, and he eventually brought his family into Egypt, and they dwelt there, right, from some odd years, and they started to be persecuted and enslaved as the years went on, right? During the time of Yahushua, the angel came to Joseph and Mary and told them, look, go into Egypt, right? Because Herod will seek the child to kill the child. Sure, his parents told him this. So Israelites always had a reputation of going into Africa to hide amongst other dark-skinned people, right? So Yahushua said, when you see Jerusalem being ransacked with armies, specifically the Romans, flee to the mountains, right? Flee to Africa, all right? So I'm going to get a few sources. This is the main simple one that are, once you come into the truth, from Babylon to Timbuktu, it gives you the whole rundown of what happened to Israelites in these areas. So let me get this for you. So y'all just walk with me. I'm going to try to get there as fast as I can. Salakia, hold on. That's not. It was another one. Okay. So I'll just work with this one for now. Hold on one second. Salakia, hold on. I got to get the door. Hold on one second. All right. Okay. So we're going to get into this Babylon to Timbuktu, and we're going to see how Israelites migrated. All right. Read that right there. Yeah.
Shalom. All right. This is from Babylon to Timbuktu, page 84. In the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state.
Okay, so we see that the Romans ransacked Jerusalem, and King Titus and his son Vespasian and King Titus and his son Vespasian put an end to the Jewish state, right? So this was in 70 AD, which Yahushua is speaking of in Luke 21, right? Read.
With great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from the Roman persecution and slavery.
Right? So 100 million Jews fled into Africa, right? Now that's a big number, 100 million Jews, right? So 1 million? 1 million Jews, Salakia. 1 million Jews fled into Africa, right? So you only imagine as they go into Africa, they settle down, they have more children, right? And they grow over time, right? Read.
The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves.
So we got to understand that these Jews that they're talking about are black, right? Read.
And the Lord scattered thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone.
Right. So when we went into Africa, like I said, as we migrated, we still kept our customs intact for the most part. But then over the years, we started to put away, our customs, and that's when we started to serve, other gods. Go ahead and read.
This prophecy and all the residue of the prophecies contained in Deuteronomy 28, 15 through 68, befell the black Jews after they disobeyed the laws of God. Many nations transported the Jews into slavery, and the son of Israel transmigrated to every continent.
Right? So the children of Israel transmigrated to every continent on earth. Every continent. And every isle, every island, right? Read.
The Jewish philosopher Philo, about 40 BC through 40 AD, who lived in Alexandria, Egypt, said that 1 million Jews resided in Libya and Egypt from the catacombs, from the Bathmos to the borders of Ethiopia. Professor A.H. Godby says that Philo leaves us doubtful about which boundaries of Ethiopia he meant. I think that Philo meant the western and southern boundaries of Ethiopia because the prophet Zephaniah mentioned from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, the daughters of my dispersed. There was a period of over 600 years between Zephaniah and Philo, and considering the new waves of immigrants coming into Africa, they had 600 years to penetrate toward all the borders of Ethiopia. Schurier wrote that Hebrewism was detectable by its inscriptions from the Egyptian border westward across North Africa to Mauritania, whatever. A.H. Godby says Jerome, 340 through 420 AD, one of the four doctors of the church, wrote that the Jews were spread from western extremity of Mauritania and to India. Now ancient Mauritania included part of the territory on the Atlantic Ocean, Morocco, and part of the modern Algeria, modern Algeria. It is certain that the Jews had migrated all across North Africa by the 2nd century. Some scholars fixed the date earlier than this. The Greek historian and geographer Strabo, 63 BC through 24 AD, said concerning the Jews of Cyrene, Libya, now these Jews already have gotten into all cities, and it is hard to find a place in the habitable earth that has not admitted this tribe of men and is not possessed by it.
Right, so the Jews literally migrated. They migrated from the east all the way to the north, right? And then coming from the north, they'll end up in West Africa, right? Keep reading.
Okay. And it has come to pass that Egypt and Cyrene, as having the same governors, and great many other nations imitate their way of living, maintain great bodies of these Jews and peculiar manner, privileged status, and grow up to greater prosperity with them, and make use of the same laws with the nation, also with that nation also.
Right. So every time the Israelites went into these countries or these parts of Africa, they always had great influence over them. And, these other nations started to keep the customs of the Israelites because they were so influential, right? Read.
After the fall of the Carthaginian metropolis in North Africa, Roman power became dominant in the Barbary states. Under Roman suzerainty, the power of the Jews of Asia and North America, Africa rebelled. 115 A.D. The Jews considered themselves numerous enough to challenge Roman authority in the east and the south. Because of their numbers, the Jews almost subdued their adversaries, who had compelled them to suffer many atrocities and indignities. Emperor Trajan sent his general Turbo to bring law and order. Instead of bringing law and order, the act of suppression and insurrection brought a massacre. The suppression of rebellion under the slogan of law and order may be good in principle, but a good thing may be carried too far. So it is. So it was in this case. The pagans and the Romans attacked the Jews indiscriminately. Both the Jewish soldiers and the uninvolved peaceful population without mercy. As a result of this merciless attack, many Jews fled to those parts of Northwest Africa known as Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and Mauritania.
Right. So once the Israelites fled into Egypt, Ethiopia, they made their way to North Africa, and then they encountered the Romans again, and they mustered up their strength and they started to fight against the Romans again, and they had them flee again. And to read that last part again.
Where were we at?
Where it says they fled into Morocco and read that.
The pagans and the Romans attacked the Jewish indiscriminately, both the Jewish soldiers and the uninvolved peace population without mercy. As a result of the merciless attack, many Jews fled to those parts of Northwest Africa.
Right, so they fled to those parts of Northwest Africa, right? Read.
Known as Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and Mauritania.
Right, let me get the door.
Salakia, Israel. Many other Jews fled to the areas where Rome did not have any jurisdiction. This was the region of the south, and the Sahara Desert and the Sudan. Grazel says, such is the explanation of how the Sahara Desert first acquired Jewish tribes, toughened by a fighting tradition and possessed a physical characteristic, blacks, which it is said still make them approximate very close to the original Jewish population of Palestine.
Right, so they fled into the Sahara Desert, and this is where this all takes place. All these kingdoms that arose in these areas, right? This is the last part, right there. Okay. Let me see if I want to get that. Yeah, let's start at The Jews, yeah. And then I'll tell you when to stop. Go ahead.
The Jews are an omnipresent people. They seem to exist everywhere. At the beginning of the 6th century, they are found in Spain more than Mohammedan conquest. Spain is known to the Jews as a classical land of crypto-Judaism because of because they feigned Christianity but practiced Jewish rituals in secret. As early as the Roman period, and the Jews of Spain had been large in number and influential. Many of them claimed to be descendants of noble Jews in Jerusalem who had been carried into exile by General Titus. After the Visigoth, a Germanic tribe invasion, the situation ameliorated for the Jews because the Visigoths adopted the Arian form of Christianity and they favored the Jews. However, when they converted to Catholicism, they became zealous like any other neophytes. King Recared ascended the throne in 589. This was the beginning of harsh religious encampments.
Drop down and read in 616 AD.
In 616 AD, the big shock came. The king ordered the baptism of all the Jews in his domain under the penalty of expulsion and the loss of all their property. According to the Catholic authorities, 90,000 embraced Christianity at this time. This was forced baptism. In the 7th century, the Jews were threatened with the penalty of slavery if they were found practicing Judaism. This cruel policy caused many Jews to flee to the Mediterranean and western coast of Africa.
Right. So so during this time when the Jews, they were like relentless, like, no, we're not getting baptized. We're not doing none of these things that you're telling us to do. So it says these cruel policies caused many Jews to flee to the Mediterranean and western coast of Africa, right? Read.
This cruel policy caused many Jews to flee to the Mediterranean and the western coast of Africa. The southernmost point of Spain, after you cross the sea, leads you to the northern or the western coast of Africa.
Right. So we could stop right there. So now you see how the Israelites came from Israel, right? Even from Spain, they fled into West Africa. So this is how the Jews ended up in those parts, and this is how they began to, make these empires. And it's crazy because during this time, Islam was on the conquest, trying to convert people, right? So now you understand why, like, a lot of the Israelites who were in that area, some people try to say, oh, these were African people or these were Muslims. No, these people who had great influence were the Israelites, and they made these great empires, right? So we're going to start with the kingdom of Ghana, right? And this Ghana is not to be confused, right, with the Ghana you see or present-day Ghana. Let's go to the Black Jewish Empire of Ghana. Let's start there.
Page 87, the Black Jewish Empire of Ghana. The ancient Black Empire of Ghana was established in Western Sudan. During the colonial period, the Western Sudan was called French, West Africa. The northern boundary of this region is the Sahara Desert. The western and southern border is Lake Chad. Some rivers of this region are the Senegal and Gambia, the Volta, the Benue, the Lagon, and last but not least, is the famous Niger River. This river flows from Guyana highlands northeast to the famous cities of Timbuktu and Gao.
Right, so we know about Timbuktu, and then I'm going to get into Gao a little bit. Guinea was another famous empire. Go ahead.
Then it makes a sharp turn and flows southeast toward the city of Benin in Nigeria. In ancient times, the Carthaginians from North Africa penetrated the Sahara Desert and the Western Sudan during the 2nd and the 3rd centuries BC. When North and Eastern Africa had amassed over 1 million Jews, these Jews began a continuous migration to the region of the Niger River. According to researchers of Nahum Slosk, the tradition of the Jewish traders in Sahara stretches back to biblical times. Slosh continues, and it is not at all surprising to encounter in every part of the desert traces and even survivals of the primitive Judaism, which at one time played an important role in the whole region of the Sahara, from Senegal to the very borders of Somaliland. As I mentioned earlier, this region that extends across the entire width of Africa below the Sahara Desert from Senegal to Somaliland is known as Sudan or Black Africa. Between the 2nd and the 3rd centuries, the Black Jews of Arabia continued migrating across the Red Sea to Ethiopia. The largest exodus of Jews occurred during the persecution by the Arabs led by Muhammad. He had said on his dying bed that he wanted Islam to be a supreme throughout all Arabia. There was a Jewish tribe called Raqab, which crossed the Red Sea and migrated to the extreme points of the Western Sudan. At the same time that the Jews were migrating westward across Sudan from Ethiopia, they also migrated southward from Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco to the fertile region between the Senegal and the Niger rivers. When the Jews from the north and the east met between these two rivers, they established an confluence or crossroad in West Africa where men could exchange their culture, ideas, and merchandise. These Jewish migrations went on with great frequency about 300 AD, and they continued with the utmost regularity for 1,200 years.
That's it. Right. So the trading of goods brought together, these Israelites and these Muslims. We know that the Muslims or Islam, the sons of Ishmael, they always been merchants and traders. So let's read this. This is from World History Encyclopedia, right? The Ghana Empire flourished in West Africa from at least the 6th to the 13th century CE, not connected geographically to the modern state of Ghana. So this Ghana is different from the one that you see right now, the Ghanaian state you see right now that's ran by the Ashanti. That's the Ashanti Empire. This is actually the Ghanaian Empire, right? The Ghana Empire was located in the Western Sudan Savannah region, modern southern Mauritania and Mali, sandwiched between the Sahara Desert to the north and the rainforest to the south. And when you understand this, these are fertile lands, right? Trade in the Ghana Empire was facilitated by the abundance of iron, copper, gold, and ivory, and easy access to the Niger and Senegal River and their tributaries, right? So these trade routes had where people came to trade. They trade iron, copper, gold, and ivory in these areas, right? So Ghana was known for these resources. And when people came to find that Ghana had these resources, they came and, they wanted to trade with Ghana. The Ghana kings residing in the capital of Kambui, Selah, grew immensely rich, building up stockpiles of gold nuggets only they were permitted to possess. Consequently, the reputation of Ghana spread to North Africa and Europe, right? So when the Europeans found out that, Ghana had all this gold, guess what they wanted? They wanted a piece of it. And this is why you see why Ghana, the Europeans came over here, and they started to destroy our people and take their gold. and we're gonna get into it a little bit later. But Mansa Musa was the one who he was spreading out. He was giving away gold like it was crazy. He was rich, and he took his gold and gave it out in Europe, all type of places. They found out that we're gonna get to it, where it was described as a fabulous land of gold. The Ghana Empire crumbled from the 12th century CE following drought, civil war, the opening up of trade routes elsewhere, and the rise of Soso Kingdom, and then the Mali Empire, right? Um, the Sudan region of West Africa, not to be confused with the modern state of that name, where the Ghana Empire would develop, had been inhabited since the Neolithic period, as is evidenced by Iron Age to Muli. The Niger River regularly flooded parts of this dry grassland and savanna, which provided fertile land for agriculture beginning at least 3,500 years ago, right? So the Niger River will flood, to give food to grow agriculture, and then to give food to the flocks. An endeavor greatly helped by the region's adequate annual rainfall. So they had rainfall continually. Cereals such as red skin African rice, millet were grown with success, as were polis, tuber, and root crops, oil, fiber plants, and fruits. Fishing and the herding of cattle and goats were other important sources of food. So, mind you, just like Joseph in Egypt, our people always had resources to give to other people. It was always our people, and it's crazy how when the Israelites came to these parts, you see it started to flourish, right? Because the Most High had his hands on them. But due to their disobedience, it always falls, right? Local deposits of copper were exploited and used for trade, while metalworking in the region, as it indicated by archaeological finds, dates back to at least the 6th century CE. There have been many finds, too, of fine pottery, some of which was traded across the region, as indicated by chemical analysis of the clay. Similarly, gold was probably locally mined or panned and then traded along the numerous waterways of the region, but concrete evidence from this early period is lacking, right? Foundation. The precise foundation of the Ghana Empire, or the Kingdom of Ghana, it may date to as early as the 6th century CE. Salakia. All right, down to the kings and the governments. Really a conglomerate of villages ruled by a single king, the empire prospered thanks to a well-trained army which had cavalry units and access to raw materials such as iron, ore, to make its weapons, and gold deposits to pay its soldiers, right? So Ghana had a thriving military, and they had the money to pay their soldiers. And not only the kings had gold, well, the king had gold nuggets, but they would pay their armed soldiers in gold dust. It is perhaps significance that the blacksmith and foregoers have long enjoyed an elevated status of the Sudan region. Possession of camels with their utility as transport of goods and people was another factor in the superiority of the Sanoki over their rivals. With these advantages, the Ghana Empire acquired new territories and new tribute from subjugated tribal chiefs, and they could monopolize first local and then regional trade. The West African trade. You go ahead and read that. The West African trade. So these are some of the things that Ghana, the Empire of Ghana, brought to these parts of Africa.
The Ghana Empire dominated Central West African trade in the upper valley of the Niger River from the 6th or 7th century CE. Control of regional trade was a lucrative business for the kings of Ghana, who passed on goods like gold, ivory, hides, ostrich feathers, and slaves to the Muslim merchants, particularly the Sanhaja Berbers. Who sent the camel caravans that crossed from the Sahara to the North Africa that crossed the Sahara from North Africa, and which brought much valued salt to the south. Goods were often taxed twice, once they came into the country and again when they left it. In addition to income from passing trade, the Ghana Empire had access to its own resources, notably iron ore and gold from the fields of Bambouk, which the elite used to exchange for such luxury goods as fine textiles, beads, copper, and horses, which were all bought by Arab traders from the north. Another commodity currency used in Ghana besides gold was copper wiring. The kings of Ghana once again illustrated their supreme position by prohibiting anyone else but themselves from owning gold nuggets. Merchants had to be satisfied with gold dust. The policy had the added advantage of ensuring the king could control the gold market and ensure its value did not decrease by having too much of it in circulation at one time.
Right. So when you talk about, currency and whoever, controls the currency, they run the world. This was Ghana running their currency. They had the gold nuggets, just like Queen Elizabeth in London and in Britain, right? They got all the gold, so they run this. Just like in what's his name in Libya. I forgot the Jake name. Having a brain fart. But anyway, he wanted to make gold, the currency, just like as Ghana did. And if he would have did that, it would have been a shift in who runs this world. And that's why America will never let, people from the East get in control, because they know if they get in control, America is done with. So whoever controls the currency controls all the resources.
That's why they're over there fighting for that oil.
Right. Over there fighting for the oil as well. Right. So they understood this and they knew this, and this is why the Ghana Empire was a household name, because they had all the resources. And when people wanted those resources, they had to go through Ghana to get these resources. Right. Yeah, let's go ahead and read that. We can read that.
Muslim influence. Islam was spread throughout the region by Muslim merchants as they came into contact with local traders and the elite of urban areas. Leaders may have recognized that adopting the religion, or seeming to, or at the least tolerating it, would be beneficial to trade. Indeed, in the Ghana Empire, there is no evidence that kings themselves converted to Islam.
Right, so here we go. We still adamant about not, converting to Islam, right? And as long as we didn't do those things, the kingdom will flourish. But you will understand, like later on, as Islam began to be prominent, our people started to convert to Islam, and that was their downfall, right? Read.
On the contrary, Ghana's capital, Saleh, was divided into two distinct towns from the mid-11th century CE. One town was Muslim and boasted 12 mosques, while the other, just 10 kilometers away and joined by many intermediate buildings, was the royal residence with many traditional cult shrines and one mosque for visiting merchants. This division reflected the countenance of indigenous animist beliefs alongside Islam, the former being practiced by rural communities.
Let me see. Yeah, go ahead and read the decline.
The first stage of Salakia, the first stage in the decline of the Ghana Empire began in the mid 11th century CE, 1076 CE. The capital was the capital was sacked by the Almoravids of North Africa, 1055 C and 1147 CE. Perhaps the retaliation for the Ghana's rulers attempted to muscle in on the trade by Saharan commercial centers, centuries, Salakia. The Ghana Empire struggled to recover thereafter. Muslim rulers may have been imposed by the Almoravids, but concrete evidence is lacking for any of the sort of conquest. Meanwhile,
Drop down and read right there.
The kingdom of Soso, aka Susu, 1180 through 1235 CE, was the biggest inheritor of the crumbling Ghana Empire, aided by the collapse of the Almoravids in the mid-12th century CE. However, the Soso would be a short-lived kingdom as their king Sumenguru, aka Sumaro, Sumaro Kante, from c. 1200 CE, was defeated by Sundiata Kiati in 1235 CE. Sundiata also seized the old Ghana capital in 1240 CE, and he would go on to find the Mali Empire in 1240 through 1645 CE, the largest and richest empire yet seen in Africa.
Right. So, Sandiata Kiata, he actually converted to Islam, and I did some research, and he could possibly be an Israelite, but he wasn't into Islam. He converted a little bit later. But from the Ghanaian Empire, right? From the Ghanaian Empire, there's little empires that came up or that were running alongside. You had the Hosea Kingdom, the Secure, the Gayo Empire, the Kingdom of Nari, Bonoman, Masi Kingdoms, the Kingdom of Benin, and then the Mali Empire. So the Kingdom of Benin was a big empire as well, and it was running alongside of the Mali Empire. But the Mali Empire came into power, I guess you could say, more rapidly, and they came on the scene more strongly. But the Benin Empire lasted longer than the Mali Kingdom. Let's read the material. Where's that? Page 91.
The material, Salakia.
No. As a matter of fact, let's read the black on page 90. Yeah.
From Babylon to Timbuktu.
No, read by. Bye.
From Babylon to Timbuktu, page 90. By what factors can we explain the emergence of black Hebrew hegemony and leadership over the indigenous tribes? The answer is simple. The Jews came into the Western Sudan from the northern and eastern Africa as a result of the chain of commercial and persecutory migrations. The Jews had settled among the most civilized people throughout the ages. They adopted new methods from other people and left their material, educational, and moral imprint among the people with whom they resided. For many centuries, the Hebrew had to employ great physical and psychological initiative. They could not afford to be complacent or apathetic. They were hated. So apathy could mean cultural stagnation or death. The Jews imported into the western part of
Right?
Africa.
Salakia. So being the underdog, as the Israelites fled into these areas, they couldn't be complacent. They always had to be on their A game, and they couldn't have the other tribes, or the other nations take advantage of them or control of them, because everybody was trying to take the spot of the Jews. And you got to understand, they knew of the Jews, so they like, man, these people was coming into our territory. These are great people, and they got this God. Everybody knew about our God, right? So they had to be on their A game, because at any given moment, these other nations was there to take the Israelites out. Go ahead.
The Jews imported into the western part of Africa superior material, educational, and moral culture soon after 300 AD. And this cultural advancement was not duplicated or exceeded until the ascendancy of the Mohammedan leader Mansa Khan Musa of Mali in 1312 AD. In the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, the Africans on the west coast did not possess the cultural superiority of the Africans on the north and east coast.
Right. So Mansa Khan Musa. Right. So it's speculation, but I believe Mansa Musa was an Israelite, but he converted to Islam, and did what he did. Go ahead and read the black.
The black Jews had an advantage over the African tribes. They carried their culture, history, laws, and written records with them. They assured them a constant precedent for the development of higher social organization. Because of the stability of the black Jewish culture, the Jews were not absorbed into the autonomous population. In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes, and the Jews made use of every opportunity.
Right. So the Jews weren't influenced by, just like when you read in I think page 48, during the time of in this time as well of Islam, when Islam telling the Israelites to convert, and they were adamant that they're not going to convert, they're going to keep the laws of God. So they always had integrity about themselves to a certain extent, because you know how Israel is. Once they see other people doing certain things, we want to go and follow. When, in fact, as we read, the nations always followed us. Right? Go ahead.
They were an industrious and skillful people.
Right. So our people always been skillful and industrious, right? Think of Joseph, think of Abraham and all the things that they brought to Egypt, right? Read.
In the Jewish Ghanaian states were found kings, princes, governors, generals, secretaries, treasurers, revenue agents, judges, architects, engineers, doctors, historians, language interpreters, mathematicians, jewelers, sculptors, masons, carpenters, painters of art, goldsmith, leather workers, potters, armorers, saddlers, blacksmith, agriculturist, and etc.
Right. So you had all these skills that the black Jews brought into Africa, right? We, like I said, we the ones who make this world. We the one who make the world go round, right?
It's crazy because nowadays all we want to do is just be rappers.
That's it. That's all we want to do. But our people literally did it all. We were at the front of everything, right? Princes, kings, governors, generals, secretaries, treasurers. This is how we ran as a nation, right? This is how they flourished. They flourished because they kept everything in-house, right? As we go into history, they say, well, the Africans did this, that. No, these were Israelites doing this. As a matter of fact, as we came into Africa, they like, man, how do these people do this? And they wanted to follow. So when you have your Dr. Umars and your Polites talking about Africa, Africa wasn't nothing if it wasn't for Israelites, right? We run the world, right? So you had, like you said, everybody wanted to be rappers, but you had doctors, historians, right? Language interpreters, right? Going back to the scriptures, when Paul said that Israelites have their gifts, you know, you have those who have gifts of healing. You have those that can interpret languages, right? These were in our people, right? Mathematicians, jewelers, right? Who do our jewelry now? Who do we go to do our jewelry?
The Chinese.
The Chinese.
The Arabs.
The Arabs. But we had our own jewelers that we can go to, and they're entrusted to make sure that we get the bang for our buck, right? Sculptures, right? Masons. That's a big one. I'm only saying that's big because I'm a Mason, you feel me? Masons, though, right? Builders of block. You see all these universities, Timbuktu, Sakura University, right? Carpenters, painters of art, goldsmiths, leather workers, potters, armorers, saddlers, blacksmith, agriculturalists, etc. We had all this stuff.
That's everything you need to live.
Right. But like, and it's crazy because when you read about the Ghanaian Empire and all the resources that they had the people to work those resources. When they got the gold, you know, you give gold, you giving gold dust or gold nuggets, you take it to the jeweler, it can be broken down. You know, the clay, you know, the agriculture, all that. But when you have a nation full of rappers, football players, and basketball players, where do the money go? Nowhere. It don't go nowhere because everybody want to be famous. Nobody want to do the important works that it takes to run a nation and run a government, right? And this is what we need to get back to. Let's go down to on 91. Yes.
From Babylon to Timbuktu, page 91. The material foundation of the Ghanaian state was based on an affluence of gold and iron. The use of iron in Africa, especially Ghana, revolutionized the social and military systems. Right.
So we talk about Rome, and we talk about how great their military was, and we talk about the Greeks, but what about blacks? What about in Ghana, Israelites, right? They revolutionized the social military system. They revolutionized it, right? Meaning that they made it great, right? Read.
El Zori stated that the Ghanaians fought many wars against their neighbors who did not use iron, but fought with bars of ebony. The Ghanaians could destroy their enemies because they fought with lances and swords.
Right? You see that? Man, the Most High gave us the ability to do these things, the resources to have these things, to make sure that we destroy our enemies. Now, you understand why, 300 Israelites could go out against 1,000 heathens. Because the Most High made us great to do these things, right? Read. The kings, lances and swords, the kings.
The king's revenue agents levied taxes on imports and exports, and the medium of exchange was gold.
Right? Man. Read, let me see. Was that it? Concerning the king of Ghana. Yeah, that was it. Read on page 93, it is now.
It is now an established fact that Ghana was a black Hebrew state, and at this juncture, I shall continue my writings concerning the Zah dynasty of Ghana.
Right, so it's evident. There's no dispute at all that these people who were from Israel came into the west part of Africa, and they named it Ghana, which means kings, right? Because what was our people? Kings. We had the King of Kings, Yahweh Shai, right? And there's without a shadow of a doubt that these people were Hebrew Israelites. They were not Africans or Hamites. They were not Hamites at all. And they ran these great empires, right? Let's see. So from the fall of Ghana, we're gonna get into the Mali Empire. I think y'all might like this one because Israelites like gold. Let me just read this before we move on to Mali. The Empire of Sanique are the founders of the first West African Empire, Ghana, which they themselves called Ouagadougou. From the 6th to the 12th century AD, Ghana was wealthy and powerful due to its access to gold. Its geographic location between the Sahara and the Sahel, and its opening of trade routes from these ecological zones into the West African forests. This is from Oxford University. So Ghana opened up these opportunities for these other empires to come about. So let's get into the Mali Empire. Let me go here first. The Mali Empire. Okay, I'll read this, and then you could, once I'm done, you can start at the Empire of Mali. The Mali Empire, 1240 to 645 of West Africa, was founded by Sandiata Kiatia, 1230 to 1255, following his victory over the kingdom of Soso, right? This is what we read in From Babylon to Timbuktu. Sandati's centralized government, diplomacy, and well-trained army permitted a massive military expansion which would pave the way for a flourishing of the Mali Empire, making it the largest yet seen in Africa. So these empires coming up, they all just, it's just like when the Greeks and the Romans, the Romans took over the Greeks, and the Romans became an even powerful military powerhouse. And it's the same way. The kingdom just transfer over, or the empire just transfer over. Ghana's on the decline. Mali is, coming into power. Diplomacy and well-trained army permitted a massive military expansion, which would pave the way for a flourishing of Mali Empire, making it the largest yet seen in Africa, right? The region of Mansa Musa, the reign of Mansa Musa, 1312 to 1337, saw the empire reach new heights in terms of territory controlled, cultural, Florentine, and the staggering wealth brought through Mali's control of regional trade routes. Acting as a middle trader between North Africa via the Sahara Desert and the Niger River to the south, Mali exploited the traffic in gold, salt, and copper, and ivory. So Ghana was known for the gold, copper, ivory. The main source, or the main commodity or resource that the Malis implemented was salt, along with the gold, copper, and the ivory. And slaves as well that crisscross West Africa, right? Because we know that the Muslims started to enslave our people, right? Muslim merchants were attracted to all this commercial activity, and they converted Mali rulers, who in turn spread Islam via such noted centuries of learning as Timbuktu, right? So that's why I say I don't believe that, I believe that Mansa Musa was an Israelite, because Islam, they started to convert the people of Mali to Islam, and it was befitting for them because they were merchants of trade, and this was easy for them to get their foot in the door, right? In contrast to the cities like Nani, the capital, Djinn and Gao, most of the rural Mali population remained farmers who clung to their traditional animist beliefs. So some of them converted to Islam, and some of them stayed to their, original belief system, and that belief system, which so happens to be, the practice of the law and the commandments. Where's that reference? Um, okay, yeah, from there. So, and this is why I say, it says, in contrast, the cities like Nani, the capital, Dejnin and Gao, most of the rulers of Mali population remained farmers who clung to their traditional animist beliefs. Read that, the Empire of Mali.
Page 95 from Babylon and Timbuktu. The Empire of Mali is also called the Philistine Empire. The word Mali is derived from a Mandingo grammatical root meaning free. The ruler of the people, the rulers and the people of the Empire of Mali were black Africans of the Mandingo tribe. This tribe was originally situated in the territory known today as Guyana, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and northward. On the banks of the upper Niger, near the present-day Sierra Leone, the Mandingos established their capital at a place called Naini.
Right, so Naini, right? These were Israelites, right? The Mandingos, right? Read.
After the breakup of the Ghanaian Empire by invasions from many tribes, Ghana split apart into a number of states.
Right, so they split apart to a number of states, right? So like I said, you had people who converted to Islam, but these cities like Nani, Djinn, and Gao, right, they were what? Finish reading that.
But in the capital of Ghana, Gao, the Hebrew Zakin continued to reign.
Right, so Gao, it says the Hebrew Zakins continued to reign. So these were Israelites who kept their same customs, right? Because when you go to other sources, they'll tell you, oh, these black African tribes or whatever, but we know that they were Israelites, right? It says that the Djinn, the Gao, most of the rulers of Mali populations remained farmers who clung to their tradition and misbelief. So who were the Gao? The capital of Ghana, Gao, the Hebrew Zakins continued to reign. So they were Hebrews, they were Israelites, right? The Mali Empire collapsed in the 1460s following civil wars. So just like the Ghanaian Empire, or the Ghana Empire, they fell through civil wars and skirmishes and quarrels between each other. The opening up of trade routes elsewhere and the rise of neighboring Songhai Empire, but then continued to control small parts of Western Empire into the 17th century. So the Mali Empire started in 1240, and they reigned up into the 1400s, and they fell, but they continued to control small parts. But then the Songhai Empire came up. Let's see. All right, let's read this. West African and the Sudan region.
The Sudan region of West Africa, where the Mali Empire would develop, had been inhabited since the Neolithic period.
Salakia, before you read that, go back to Babylon, Timbuktu. The king on page 96, the king.
From Babylon to Timbuktu, page 96.
Come. So we're going to run down how Sandiata was king and how after him Mansa Musa came to be in power. Salakia, go ahead.
The king of Mali, who was rendered credit for the establishment and organization of an imperial system in Mali, was Sundunata. The year that the Mandingo state rose to imperial power is dated from 1240. In this year, a decisive battle was fought between the Mandingos and the people from Tekwir. Evidently, Almoravides from medieval Mauritania.
So these were once the Ghana Empire fell, these were the small empires that, or the smaller empires that rose up and they fought. These were just the branch offs of the Ghana Empire. Go ahead.
Sundiata defeated Sumanguru and his people, who had captured the seat of the Hebrew kings of Ghana and imposed a tribute on them, like other kings of the Western Sudan. Like other kings of the Western Sudan, Sundiata knew that power was contingent on wealth.
Right. So the power was always contingent on wealth. So whoever controlled the wealth, they controlled the world, or they controlled the monopoly board. Right. Read.
Most of the wealth was in trade, and most of the trade was in the hands of Muslims. Consequently, he converted to Islam.
Right. So that just tells you right there that he wasn't a Muslim. He was actually an Israelite, and he converted to Islam. And this is how Islam began to have its power, because after him rose another king, right? Go ahead and read.
Almost 100 years after the death of Sundiata, a powerful king emerged in Mali. His name was Mansa Musa.
Mansa Kankan Musa, right? Read.
During his lifetime, 1312 through 1337, accomplishments transcended his predecessors. His empire extended from east to west. Beginning at the Atlantic Ocean to the northern modern Nigeria, and from the north to south, reaching almost from central Mauritania and extending to the borders of modern Ghana and the Ivory Coast.
Right. So Mansa Musa literally controlled the whole western part of Africa, right? And his military strength and everything exceeded that of Ghana, the Ghana Empire. Read. In 1326.
In 1326 AD, Mansa Musa made a pilgrimage to Mecca, the holy city of the Mohammedans. It is said that he exhibited a marvelous splendor that astonished the spectators. He arrived in the east with thousands of foot soldiers and over 60,000 mounted warriors.
Right, so he made a pilgrimage to Mecca, right? And on his pilgrimage, he carried all these warriors. He had a whole bunch of people with him. We're gonna get into it, but yeah, it was crazy. Read.
In addition to his soldiers, he had 500 slaves, each carrying a rod of gold weighing 6 pounds. As a contribution to the holy cities, he gave 20,000 pieces of gold.
Right. So in Deuteronomy, I believe, chapter 18, where it says that a king shouldn't acquire gold to himself, horses. Matter of fact, I don't want to butcher it. Let me get it. Salakia.
It's just crazy how he just showed his power. Like, says that he had 60,000 mounted warriors. Like, imagine just seeing that, like, walking through the desert, like 60,000 warriors. It's insane. Slaves carrying 20,000 pieces of gold.
Right.
Man.
Get Deuteronomy chapter 17 and verse 17. Let's read that. Because then you understand, because Master Musa, he said that he had his slaves carrying gold rods too. Like, this is what happened when you become greedy as a king. You begin to do these things because, you know, all the things that you want to bring, your camels and your horses can't carry it all. Now you got to take your slaves to do it for you. Read that, Deuteronomy 17 and 17.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 17 and verse 17. Neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away. Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold.
Right. It's not saying that you can't have multiple wives. It's not saying that you can't have silver and gold, but you cannot greatly multiply those things. Why? Because that's going to turn your heart away from the Most High, and then essentially it's going to make you put a burden on the people, right? That's why the Most High had the kings to be satisfied. Yeah, you're going to get your splendor. Yeah, you're going to get your gold, your silver, and all that, but sometimes things are too much, right? And when you have slaves carrying gold for you, especially when these slaves are actually your people, that's when you start to you went off the path. You went off the righteous way.
If you can't carry that much gold, it's too much for you.
Right,
bro.
exactly. So that's what we got to understand. But Master Musa, he was rich. He liked to do it like Israelites do it, right? Go ahead and read. Was that it? Yeah, that was it. Go ahead and read West African and the Sudan region.
West Africa and the Sudan region. The Sudan region of West Africa, where the Mali Empire would develop, had been inhabited since the Neolithic period, as evidenced by Iron Age, tumuli, megaliths, and remains of abandoned villages. The Niger River regularly flooded parts of this dry grassland and savanna, which provided fertile land for agriculture beginning at least 3,500 years ago.
Right. So, like I said, at the same time as the Ghana Empire, the Benin, the Mali Empire was coming up as well, but they weren't necessarily a powerhouse yet, right? But they had these resources as well. Read.
And an endeavor greatly helped by the region's adequate annual rainfall. Cereals such as red-skinned African rice and millet were grown with success, as were pulses, tuber and root crops, oil and fiber plants and fruits. Fishing and cattle herding were important sources of food, while local deposits of copper were exploited and used for trade. Similarly, gold was probably local mined and panned and then traded, but concrete evidence from this period is lacking.
Right, so this is the same thing as in the Ghanaian Empire. Let's read this right here. Yeah.
The Ghanaian Empire, 6th and 13th century, was the first major political power in West Africa to create an empire based on military might and the wealth gained from the regional trade, not geographically connected to the modern day Ghana, but located in the northwest. The empire was in serious decline by the end of the 12th century, beset by civil wars, rebellions of subjugated chiefdoms, and poor harvest. That the empire began to disintegrate.
Right, so like I said, the Kingdom of Ghana was the first to come up, And as the kingdom of Ghana declined, this is when the Mali Empire started to come up. Go to the Sandiata Keita and the government.
Sundiata Keita, aka Sunjata or Sunjata, 1230 through 1255, was a man like Salakia, was a Malink prince, whose name mean lion prince, and he waged war against the kingdom of Susu from the 1230s. Sundiata formed a powerful alliance of other disgruntled chiefs, tired of Sumaguru's harsh rule, and defeated the Susus in a decisive battle in Krina, aka Karina, in 1235. In 1235. In 1240, Sundiata captured the old Ghana capital, forming a centralized government of tribal leaders and a number of influential Arab merchants. This assembly declared Sundiata the supreme monarch and gave him such honorary titles as Mari Diata, which means Lord Lion. The name Sundiata gave to his empire, Africa's largest up to that point, was Mali, meaning the place where the kings live. It was also decreed that all future kings would be selected from the Keita clan. Although the title was not necessarily given to the eldest son of a ruler, which sometimes is fierce disputes among candidates.
Right, and this is where Mansa Musa came from. Do I want to read that just for time's sake? No, I don't want to read that. Let's talk about some of the things that went on in the kingdom of Mali. Let's go to trade in Timbuktu. So, as we know, Timbuktu was, one of the major cities, and they had universities as well. Go ahead.
Like its political predecessors, the Mali Empire prospered thanks to the trade and its prime location situated between the rainforest of southern West Africa and the powerful Muslim caliphates of North Africa. The Niger River provided ready access to Africa's interior and Atlantic coast, while the Berber controlled camel caravans that crossed the Sahara Desert. Ensured valuable commodities came from the north.
Right. So if you had the river, if you had the coast, it's easy to access goods from those ports to trade. Right. Go ahead.
The Mali rulers had triple income. They taxed the passage of trade goods, bought goods, and sold them at a much higher price, and had access to their own valuable natural resources. Significantly, the Mali Empire controlled the rich gold-bearing regions of Galam, Bambouk, and Bor. One of the main trade exchanges was gold dust for salt from the Sahara. Gold was in particular demand from European powers like Castile in Spain and Venice and Genoa in Italy, where coinage was now being minted in precious metals.
Right. So salt and gold profit. So from these areas, the salt and gold was traded, and this is what made Mali a powerful empire, and this what gave Mansa Musa his riches. Let's read that.
Timbuktu, founded c. 1100 by the nomadic Tuaregs, was a semi-independent trade port which had a double advantage of being on the Niger River bend and the starting point for the trans-Saharan caravans.
Right. So the Timbuktu started off as a small market, right, and as people began to pour into it little by little, First, the Ghana Empire, then Mali is going to pour more into it, making it a big trading place. Right.
The city would be monopolized and then taken over by the Mali kings, who made it into one of the most important and most cosmopolitan trade centuries in Africa.
Right.
Through Timbuktu, there passed such a lucrative goods as ivory, textiles, horses, important for military use, glassware, weapons, sugar, cola nuts, a mild stimulant, cereals such as sorghum and millet, spices, stone beads, craft products, and slaves. Goods were bartered for or paid using an agreed upon commodities such as copper or gold ingots, set quantities of salt or ivory, or even cowrie shells, which came from Persia.
Right. So here we go. From Babylon to Timbuktu. As you can see on the picture, if you got the book, you see, people trading and everything. You have all the resources, but this is where it come from Babylon to Timbuktu. Timbuktu was, I don't know, when I heard about Timbuktu, without doing the research, I only looked at it as a place where black people dwelt. But as you can see through research, they had universities, and all the trades of goods went directly through Timbuktu, right? Go ahead, Master Musa.
After a string of seemingly lackluster rulers, the Mali Empire enjoyed its second golden era during the reign of Mansa Musa the First. In the first half of the 13th century, with an army numbering about 100,000 men, including an armored cavalry corps of 10,000 horses, and with talented General Saran Madian, Mansa Musa was able to maintain and extend Mali's empire, doubling its territory. He controlled lands up to Gambia and Lower Senegal in the west. In the north, tribes were subdued along the whole length of the Western Sahara border region. In the east, control spread up to Gayo on the Niger River, and to the south, the Beer region, and the forest of what became known as the Gold Coast came under Mali oversight. The Mali Empire thus came to include many different religious and ethnic and linguistic groups.
Right. So as Mali began to expand its empire through the south and to the north and the east, they began to spread their influence and also build mosques everywhere they went to spread the influence of Islam as well. Right. Go ahead and read that.
To govern these diverse peoples, Mansa Musa divided his empire into provinces, with each one ruled by a governor appointed personally by him and responsible for local taxes.
Right. So a good leader is not going to try to control all these areas by himself. So what do he do? He set up these emperors or these princes to rule in their province and in their areas, and they report to him, just like as you see how the United States is ran, right? How the government is set up, right? Go ahead.
Appointed personally by him and responsible for local taxes, justice, and settling tribal disputes. The administration was further improved with greater records kept and sent to the centralized government offices at Naini.
Right. So my thing is like, when I don't know what people think when they read this, but it's like the things that they show people on TV, how undeveloped Africa is, and just the things that they show, like it's just a safari with animals. No, they had government set up. They had people in place to deal with disputes, and they had taxation, and They had civil and moral laws, right?
The same way that this kingdom is still standing.
Exactly.
It's what it is.
Exactly. So this is what you see in Africa, right? These are the empires and these are the things that they did to make themselves great, right? Read.
With more tribute from more conquered chiefs, more trade routes under Mali control, and even more natural resources to exploit, Mansa Musa and the Mali elite became immensely rich. Immensely rich. When the Mali king visited Cairo in 1324, he spent or simply gave away so much gold that the price of bullion crashed by 20%.
Right. Read that again. That's crazy.
When the Mali king visited Cairo in 1324, he spent or simply gave away so much gold that the price of bullion crashed by 20%.
Right. So we talk about market crashes. We talk about how you give out stimulus checks and then other things start to crash. The economy starts to go down. It's crazy. Mansa Musa, as he went into Cairo, he's just giving away gold to the poor, just giving them away. Because he was rich. He could do it. Right? But, gold ran the world. So as he gave it away, some things, suffered, just like you see today. Right? Read.
Such riches set off a never-ending round of rumors that Mali was a kingdom paved with gold. In Spain, c. 1375, a map maker was inspired to create Europe's first detailed map of West Africa, part of the Catalan Atlas.
Right. So as Mansa Musa started to, he started his pilgrimage and he went to these different places in Africa. He started to give away gold. The Europeans start to hear it and like, man, this place, Mali is decked with gold. We need to go there, right? And then we know after the Dark Ages, leading up until the transatlantic slave trade, we know why the Europeans came here, because our people, Israelites, they've been trading gold and everything with Europe. They've been doing those things, right? Go ahead, read it.
The map, the map has Mansa Musa wearing an impressive gold crown and triumphantly brandishing a huge lump of gold in his hand. European explorers would spend the next 5 centuries trying to locate the source of this gold and the fabled trading city of Timbuktu.
Right. So that's what they do. They hear about it and they're like, man, we need to go over there because they have gold. Right? They heard about what's in the Americas. They heard about the 10 tribes and how they came over here and they wanted to rob it of his resources. Right? They have all our records. They know about King Solomon and how he went to these different areas with his gold. Right? Getting resources, bringing back all type of exotic animals, right? They know these things. So what do they want to do? Go, and they wanted to rob the place. Yeah. For the sake of time, I think I want to read. I think we're gonna move on to the Benin, but let's read about Timbuktu real quick. Yeah, I'm looking for the one that I had. Go to page 97. Mansa Musa on page 97. Let's read that.
The book from Babylon and Timbuktu, page 97. Mansa Musa is not only remembered for his pilgrimage trade, trade and military accomplishments, but also for his public constructions. The king of Mali built a palace and several mosques in the celebrated city of Timbuktu. At the extremities of the city of Timbuktu, these mosques were erected. The mosque of Jengabir was located in the southwest, and the Mosque of Sankor was located in the northern quarter of the city.
Right, Sankore University. So Mansa Musa wasn't just known for his silver and his gold, but he established these places of learning as well, right? Read.
Salakia.
Go ahead.
All right, Salakia. The Mosque of Ginjibir was located in the southwest, and the Mosque of Sankor was located in the northern quarter of the city. Mansa Musa was indeed a champion of Islamic religion and learning. This was the time that the city of Timbuktu and Jini began to rise as scholastic cities.
Right, scholastic cities. Read.
Um, Concomitance with the Mosque of Sankor was established also the University of Sankor. The university during the period of the dynasty of Askia, the Great acquired a universal reputation as a university of theology, law, philosophy, medicine, history, etc.
Right. So Mansa Musa, brought all these things. So it wasn't just about silver and gold. We know our people were smart as well. Let's read that. Center of learning.
Islamic learning was also encouraged, with Timbuktu processing several universities where books were accumulated in large libraries, and students were trained. Students were trained first to memorize text, and for higher learning level students to produce commentaries and creative works based on Islamic religion's text. One noted scholar was the Saint Sharif Sadid Yahya al-Taldisli, 1464 CE, who became the patron saint of the city. And it's perhaps important to note that the religious studies were wider than we might today imagine. The traditional Islamic humanities subjects included not only theology, but also traditions, law, grammar, rhetoric, logic, history, geography, astronomy, and astrology. Medicine was another subject given great attention, making the city famous far and wide for its doctors.
So my thing is when we hear about Islam or Islamic, we got to understand that the Muslims were merchants, right? They were merchants of trade. So they took goods and they took it into other lands, and that's what they did. That was their occupation. But when you hear about, about the humanities subjects, including not only theology but also tradition, law, grammar, rhetoric, logic, history, geography, astronomy, and astrology, medicine. Medicine was another subject giving great attention, right? What did it say in page 90 about the Israelites in Ghana?
Said the same thing.
It said the same thing. These were Israelites, right, who converted to Islam. But these were the same people who did the same thing, practicing these things, right? Same people. That was it. That was it for Timbuktu. So we know that Timbuktu wasn't only known for its trade routes and everything, but it was also a place for scholastics and learning. So with that, we're gonna get one more. We're gonna get one more, and then we're gonna close it out. I was gonna do the Sung Hey, but I feel like the Benin. I feel like the Benin is worth talking about. Let's see. And I don't have I think we could do another lesson on the Duhami, which was uh, a tribe of women who rose up and fought against European rule in different tribes in Africa. Um, they're um, they were noted as the women kings, as we see the movie. But this was a part of our history because the men were subdued, but um, it wasn't that they were usurping authority, but they had to do what they had. So let's get into the Benin. Salakia. Let's read that. Right there. So the Benin has a great or a famous wall called the Walls of Benin, and it's said to be larger than the Great Wall of China, right? And if you look at this structure, I wish I had it up on the PowerPoint, but y'all can look it up. It's called the Walls of Benin. You will see how this city and this structure was set up. It was crazy. People marveled at this, right? Let's start that. The kingdom.
The kingdom of Benin was an important African kingdom that flourished between the 13th and the 19th century A.D. Benin was located in the southwestern part of the modern-day Nigeria, with Benin City as its capital. Benin City is perhaps the best known. But the Benin City is perhaps best known for a group of artifacts collectively known as the Benin Bronzes. These objects, looted by British forces during their expedition against Benin in 1897, while a large number of these artifacts ended up in the British museums, others were dispersed among museums in the West. A lesser-known accomplishment of the Kingdom of Benin is the so-called Walls of Benin, which surrounded Benin City. The Walls of Benin were damaged by British during their expedition and deteriorated further in the decades that followed. Parts of the walls are still visible today, though they're still facing the threat of destruction.
Right. So Benin is known for its infrastructures, right, and the things that they built.
You see how they say instead of they say expedition instead of invasion.
Right, exactly. They invaded this because they was like, man, this mess is crazy.
Right.
I'm gonna show you a better picture than that one, but go ahead and read this.
Benin City, the mighty medieval capital, now lost without trace. Wonder why.
Right.
With its mathematical layout, and earthworks longer than the Great Wall of China, Benin City was one of the best planned cities in the world. When London was a place of thievery and murder, so why is nothing left? Ancient Benin City. Benin City was described as a wealthy, industrious, well-governed, and richly decorated. This is the story of a lost medieval city you've probably never heard about. Benin City, originally known as Edo, was once the capital of a pre-colonial African empire located in the now southern Nigeria. The Benin Empire was one of the oldest and most highly developed states in West Africa, dating back to the 11th century.
Right. It was the oldest and most highly developed state. Right. So, man, like they did great things. Go ahead and read.
The Guinness Book of World Records 1974 edition described the walls of Benin and its surrounding kingdoms as the world's largest earthwork carried out prior to the mechanical era.
Right. So the Guinness Book of World Records put this in record, showing that, look, this work of art is greater than the Wall of China. So when people, it's crazy how they like to hide our history. I really, until I did my research, I didn't really hear about this. But the Wall of Benin, everybody talk about, oh, I want to go see the Great Wall of China.
Right.
right? The Great Wall of China came later. But when you see this and the things that they were working with, it's crazy, right?
It says one of the best planned cities in the world.
One of the best planned cities. Like, you think about all these infrastructures that are building. This is one of the best planned. It's crazy. Go ahead.
According to estimates by the new scientist Fred Pierce, Benin City's walls were at 1.4 times larger than the Great Wall of China.
4 times larger than the Great Wall of China.
Can you imagine that?
That's crazy. Read.
And consumed 100 times more material than the Great Pyramid of Cheops.
Man, bruh, like monkeys, right? Monkeys. That's all we are. But we doing great stuff like this.
Right.
We're building great empires like this. And this is why they hide our history. Right? Go ahead.
Situated on a plain, Benin City was enclosed by massive walls in the south and deep ditches in the north beyond the city walls. Numerous further walls were erected that separated the surroundings of the capital into around 500 distinct villages.
Right? So it was walls within walls. So it was like a maze going through there. You had to know your way around there. Right? Crazy. Go ahead.
Benin City was also one of the first cities to have a semblance of street lighting. Huge metal lamps, many feet high, were built and placed around the city, especially near the king's palaces. The king's palace.
Right? Street lights, street lighting.
Watch this though.
Huge metal lamps all throughout the city. So the city was lit up, right? Go ahead.
Fueled by palm oil.
Fueled by palm oil. Read.
The burning wicks were lit at night to provide illumination for traffic to and from the palace.
And the first person, is it a coincidence?
Right.
That built the street lights was black. Was black? Come on now. Go ahead.
When the Portuguese first discovered the cities in 1485, they were stunned to find this vast kingdom made of hundreds of interlocked cities and villages in the middle of the African jungle.
Wow, so that's why there's, they don't find no historical records or anything about this because they don't want to put it out.
Right. And they know we can't go over there.
Right, exactly. Go ahead.
They called it the Great City of Benin. At a time when there was hardly any other places in Africa the Europeans acknowledged as a city. Indeed, they classify Benin City as one of the most beautiful and best planned cities in the world.
Man, it's crazy.
Man. Keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
In 1691, the Portuguese ship captain Lorcino Pinto observed Great Benin, Great Benin, where the king resides, is larger than Lisbon. All the streets run straight and as far as the eye can see. The houses are large, especially that one of the king, which is richly decorated as fine columns. This city is wealthy, industrious. This city is wealthy and industrious. It is so well governed that the theft is unknown, and the people live in such security that they have no doors to their houses.
Man, it sounds like Israelites keeping the law, right?
That's what it sounds like.
You could live in a place where you don't have no doors, and nobody is gonna come steal from you. There's no thievery. Come on now.
Sound like the kingdom.
Right. Sound like the kingdom, right? That's why I said we get the blessing and the curses. So the Most High give us the ability in these times, in the dark ages, to build up empires, great infrastructures to dwell in and live in. And then that's the blessing right there. And then once we go off and we stop, we got to now start putting doors on our houses because we're stealing from each other and stuff like that. That's when the kingdom fall. Right? Go ahead.
In contrast, London at the same time is described by Bruce Hollingsinger a professor of English at the University of Virginia, as Salakia, as being a city of thievery, prostitution, murder, bribery, and a thriving black market made the medieval city ripe for exploitation by those with skill for the quick blade or picking a pocket. Benin City's planning and design was done according to careful rules of symmetry, proportionality, and repetition, now known as fractal design.
So they've been on
Fractal
this,
design, kind of.
right? Read.
The mathematician Ron Eglish, author of African Fractals, which examines the patterns underpinning architectures, art designs in many parts of Africa. In 1691, we already got this.
Read that one. Let me see. Was that it? I think that was it. Did we read this one? Okay, you go ahead and read this one. Yeah.
What impressed the first visiting Europeans most was the wealth, artistic beauty, and magnificence of the city. The city was split into 11 divisions, each smaller replication of the king's court, comprising a sprawling series of compounds containing accommodations, workshops, and public buildings, interconnected by innumerable doors and passageways, all richly decorated with the art that made Benin famous. The city was literally covered in it. The exterior walls of the courts and compounds were decorated with horizontal ridge designs, agben, the clay carvings portraying animals, warriors, and other symbols of power. The carvings will create contrasting patterns in the strong sunlight.
Crazy.
Man. Natural objects, pebbles or pieces of mica were also pressed into the wet clay, while in the palaces, pillars were covered with bronze plaques illustrating the victories and deeds of former kings and nobles. At the height of its greatness in the 12th century, well before the start of the European Renaissance, the kings and nobles of Benin City patronized craftsmen, and lavished them with gifts and wealth in the return for their depiction of the kings and dignitaries, great exploits in the intricate bronze sculptures. These works from the Benin are equal to the very finest examples of European casting techniques. Stolen.
Right.
Wrote Professor Felix von Luscham, formerly of the Berlin Ethnological Museum. Benvenuto Cellini could not have cast them better, nor could anyone else before or after him. Technically, these bronzes represent the very highest possible achievement.
Man.
That's insane, bro.
Need I say more? Like, our people are great, bro. And look at, that's the infrastructure.
It's crazy.
Crazy. The water flowing through there.
How could you invade?
Right. Irrigation system. Like, come on now.
Right off the river.
Right off the river. It's crazy. So, right as you have the Black Plague in Europe, while white Europeans are being, plagued with diseases and everything, you have Israelites being great, building up infrastructure, trading resources, having armies, um, you know, being splendid in gold and silver, and just doing great things around the world, um, being high achievers, and then even in Europe as well, because simultaneously during that time, our people was ruling in Europe, and we had to bring those learnings to Europe as well to teach white people, how to do those things, right? So
You see how influential we were back then. They were like writing us on their atlases. Like these people are great. Like so, imagine
exactly.
how much more today, and we're in this terrible situation that we're in. They still watching. They still want the tricks and tips that we got.
Absolutely. And we great because you writing maps, you creating maps and atlases, to represent us and we're like, come on now, but they want to suppress it and hide it or whatever. But the Most High said, let me get a scripture real quick. It's in Revelation. Let's go to Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12. And let's start at verse, I think I want verse 15 maybe. Let's start at verse 15.
The book of Revelation, chapter 12 and verse 15. And the serpent cast out of its mouth, Salakia, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away with the, maybe Salakia, as that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood.
Right, so this woman is talking about Israel, and the serpent is actually talking about the so-called white race and how they spill out all these lies and try to distract us from who we actually are, from rising to power and to throw us off our game, right? Read verse 16.
And the earth helped the woman.
The earth helped the woman. How did the earth help the woman? Right? Because of archaeological proof of who we are, and the history, the rich history that we have in these certain areas like the western part of Africa, and how we build up these kingdoms, right? And all the findings that they find. This is how the earth helped the woman, the historical facts that the earth spews up to give Israelites that confidence in that history to come back to who they are, right? Read.
And the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth.
Right? So the earth swallowed up those lies, like as simultaneously as the white race or the Edomites are throwing out these lies, the earth is actually helping us. We're actually going out and doing the research and showing that, look, Israelites dwelled in these areas. Israelites did these great things on this earth. Israelites built these great empires, right? That's all the Most High, saying that even though the lies are put out, if you go out, the scripture says that it's for the Lord to conceal a thing, but it's for kings to figure it out. So we go out and we do the research, and we find these findings, and it lets us know of our rich and great history, right? So when people hear this, they're like, man, like, we great. So on the contrary, it wasn't Africans or Muslims. It was actually Hebrew Israelites who dwelt in these parts and who did these great things, right? No, that was it. That was it. So with that, I know I went a little bit over because we started a little bit late, but I hope y'all enjoyed this this world history lesson of the Dark Ages. I tried to hit some of the more prominent empires that we don't hear about. I really wanted to touch on the Benin because a lot of our people, they don't know about that history. So I hope it was a good class. I hope you guys learned something from it, and we'll catch you next time on the next World History.
Shalom.
Yeah. Shalom.